Chapter 2, Sharkworms. Just as the sound of the bugle, which is like a small trumpet, died away, the fog lifted, for a second giving a glimpse of the entire bay. Over to the right, further towards the grey outline of the peaceable country, there were the shadowy shapes of 4 or 5 peaceable fishing boats, surrounded by clouds of screeching, black-backed sea dragons. "Over there!" yelled Sharpknife and Toughnut Jr., turning their boat. "The Raven!" "It's all under control, Fishlegs," shouted Hiccup excitedly. "I can see where we're going." Hiccup yanked the rudder of the hopeful Puffin so sharply that Fishlegs lost his balance and fell face first into the water at the bottom of the boat. The wind caught the sails at exactly the right speed, and the hopeful Puffin surged forward after the others, but Hiccup hadn't noticed Snotcloud's boat, Sparrowhawk, steaming up behind him at great speed. Sparrowhawk was as lean and mean and hungry as Snotcloud himself. Beautifully built out of elm wood, she came to a point so sharp at the prow that she sliced through the water as easily as an axe through a scallop. She was being steered by Dog's Breath, the Durbrain, Snotcloud's best friend, who was a great hairy bully of a boy with a ring through his nose, who was snorting so hard with laughter that snot flew in all directions. "Get him, Fireworm," whispered Snot-faced Snotcloud, and his dragon, a glistening, blood-red, monstrous nightmare, leaped from Snotcloud's shoulder and dive-bombed Hiccup from behind with a furious shriek. Fireworm swooped down and pushed Hiccup's helmet down over his eyes with her talons. Hiccup took his hands off the rudder in surprise, and at the same moment Sparrowhawk rammed into the port side of the Puffin, the hopeful Puffin, denting her severely. "So sorry, useless," jeered Snot-faced Snotcloud as Sparrowhawk sailed on, completely unhurt. "Your pathetic raft is so small, we didn't see you." "Ha ha ha!" guffawed Dog's Breath the Durbrain. The ramming sent the hopeful Puffin into one of her spins. For a long time she spun round in wobbly circles like a confused sea urchin. Eventually Hiccup regained control of the rudder, and Fishlegs picked himself up from the bottom of the boat, moaning slightly. The hopeful Puffin completed her final spin and began moving swiftly forwards. But the fog had come down again, if anything even thicker than before. After all that spinning, Hiccup had absolutely no idea which direction they were facing. And when the last faint echoes of Snotcloud and Dog's Breath's jeering had faded away, they sailed on in spooky silence. "Where is everybody?" asked Fishlegs. "Shh, shh, shh," scolded Hiccup. "I'm trying to listen." The boys were quiet for 10 long minutes. The only sound to be heard was the lapping of water against the sides of the boat and a brisk wind filling out the sail. They were gliding along at quite a rate, but where were they going? Hiccup and Fishlegs strained their eyes into the fog and their ears into the silence, desperate to see or hear something, anything at all. But there was nothing. It might have been Hiccup's imagination playing tricks on him, but it seemed to him as if the air suddenly felt just a tiny bit warmer. And when he trailed a finger briefly into the water, it felt just a tiny bit less icy than it should have done. And then he got to thinking about the summer current and sharkworms, and a prickle of fear ran all down his back, and everywhere about him the drifting, ghostly fog seemed to be taking the shape of sharkworm fins. "Just out of interest," asked Fishlegs casually, "how does a sharkworm attack you exactly?" "Well," replied Hiccup, changing direction yet again in the hope of getting back to the safety of the bay, "sharkworms should only attack you if you're wounded. Even if you're not in the water, they can smell the blood, and that drives them crazy. And then because they have legs as well as a fishy tail, they can actually climb aboard a ship to get you. That's where they got their nickname of pirate dragons, because although they can survive at least 10 minutes in the air, they generally drag you back into the water to kill you. Oh, brilliant, said Fishlegs, frantically checking himself all over to see if he had any grazes. Do you think eczema counts, or does it have to be an actual cut? I'm not sure, said Hiccup. I've never actually met a shark worm. Better and better, said Fishlegs. It's at times like this that I am so glad that I was born a Viking and not a Roman. The Romans were the Vikings' deadly enemies, a very bossy lot who wanted to take over the world and had jolly nearly got there. Think how boring it would be to be a Roman. All those warm baths and lounging around in togas when you could be out here enjoying the fresh air and the multi-fanged, blood-crazy carnivores. That is an example of sarcasm. Shh, said Hiccup, changing direction for the 9th time. Let's just see whether we can hear anything this time. But again there was silence, and the splash of seawater coming over the side onto Hiccup's ankle felt definitely warm. I'm hungry, said a deep little voice from Hiccup's chest, and both boys jumped at the sudden sound. The nose of Toothless, Hiccup's disobedient little dragon, poked out of the top of Hiccup's shirt, closely followed by the rest of him. He crawled sleepily up Hiccup's neck to his familiar perch on the top of Hiccup's helmet, where he shook out his wings, had a quick rummage for dragon fleas, and gave an enormous yawn, revealing a very pink, forked tongue and the fang-free gums that gave him his name. Even though he was only a common or garden dragon, the most ordinary dragon of the dragon species, Toothless was a beautiful little creature. He was a deep emerald green in colour, fading to shimmering pearl on his tummy like a mackerel, lightly sprinkled with pale brown freckles. Enormous, innocent, grass-green eyes peered out from between absurdly long eyelashes. Appearances, of course, were deceptive, for dragons are among the most selfish animals on the planet, and Toothless was, in fact, a shark in a baby seal's clothing. You can help us, actually, Toothless, said Hiccup. Now, this is important. We need to find ourselves back to the bay. We're a bit worried that we might have accidentally got ourselves into the summer current, and we don't want to bump into any shark worms now, do we? Hiccup laughed nervously. So what you could do is flap around and look for boats so that we can get back on the right course. Ask Horror Cow. Toothless is hungry, said Toothless grumpily. He'd woken up in a bad mood. Hiccup raised his eyes to the heavens before explaining patiently that Horror Cow was asleep and there was no way that she was going to wake up. Horror Cow was Fishlegs' dragon. A nice enough beast, but she spent most of her time asleep. She was lying sprawled full length underneath one of the rowing benches. Fishlegs had put a coat under her head to lift it clear of the water so that she didn't drown. Toothless not moving. Toothless was in a big sulk now. No food, no moving. Toothless on strike. Hiccup, bossy, bossy, bossy. To do this, to do that. Toothless is a dragon, not a slave. Work, 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 that's all you make poor Toothless do. Toothless, you've been asleep since breakfast, protested Hiccup, and that's the most unfair thing I've ever heard. I wait on you hand and foot. You know I do. I feed you constantly. I tell you jokes. I carry you everywhere. Toothless has weak wings, said Toothless pathetically. You woke me up 4 times last night. Oh, Toothless had a nightmare. Toothless opened his big green eyes even wider. Great, big, fat, horrible humans with big teeth chasing poor Toothless all through his bed. Want to get Toothless because Toothless is so special. You wanted oysters, howled Hiccup. Oysters at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oysters good for nightmares, protested Toothless. Hiccup ran out of patience. Yeah, you wouldn't shut up. You perched on my father's bed and said you'd screech in his ear if I didn't get them. I had to get up, I had to get dressed, I had to go down to the oysters hoard in Hooligan Harbour, and then when I got back again, you wouldn't even eat them, because you said they were the wrong colour or something. Well, they had black bits on them, whined Toothless. Toothless hates black bits. They're yucky. Oh, don't be such a big baby, Toothless, snapped Hiccup. It was only bits of seaweed, and even when I picked them all off, you still wouldn't eat them. I hate to interrupt, said Fishlegs nervously, but I'm pretty certain I saw the fin of a shark worm over there. But Toothless and Hiccup were so cross they didn't even hear. They were nose to nose, eyeballing each other. Toothless had puffed up to nearly twice his normal size and had turned an unpleasant, mustardy red colour. Hiccup had forgotten you shouldn't really look a dragon in the eye for too long because their gaze is hypnotic. And he was starting to feel dizzy, but he was so angry he didn't care. That's quite a good skill. I'd quite like that skill. I'd hypnotise you lot. This dragon had gone too far this time. Hiccup had had enough. He was going to put his foot down. I do all these things for you, he continued, and every now and then I ask you to do a few simple things for me, like catch some mackerel in a dragon training lesson or look out for shark worms so that we don't all get dragged off and torn to pieces. And what do? You go on strike. Well, you've gone too far this time. I've had enough. I'm putting my foot down. You could just go on strike then and see if I care. Okay then, hissed Toothless. Toothless really will go on strike. With great dignity, Toothless flapped off Hiccup's shoulder and up to the top of the mast, where he perched, muttering to himself in a furious undertone. Toothless a big baby, is he? Ha! We'll see about that, Mr. Smarty Pants Hiccup. Let's just find out how long you last without the help of the big baby. What's he doing? Asked Fishlegs. Fishlegs didn't speak Dragonese, so he wasn't sure what was going on. Is he listening out for boats so that we can get back to the bay? No, admitted Hiccup, whose head was still spinning after the staring contest with Toothless. We had a bit of a row and he's gone on strike. But I've had it up to here with that dragon. He's pushed me too far too often. I'm drawing a line in the mud. Oh, for Thor's sake. Fishlegs exploded. We haven't got time for that now. Look! Hiccup's eyes finally swam back into focus. He looked. The fog had shifted around, making it difficult to see, but for a moment Hiccup thought he might have glimpsed a black fin, with the jagged edge that made it clear that this was the fin of a sharkworm. Rather than that of its less dangerous relative, the ordinary shark. I don't think that was a sharkworm, you know, Fishlegs, said Hiccup uncertainly. I think it's just the fog playing tricks on our eyes. Okay, I'm going to stop there. We shall find out tomorrow what happens next. Okay, I'm on page 40. Page 40. I'm trying to remember that. See you tomorrow, everyone. Bye.